Wednesday to discuss issues of peace and sustainability in Africa and across the world. So let me try and share the screen. That's the
There is no sound.
Dr. Mutareba, there is no sound or whatever you have shared. We can only see words, but the sound is missing.
Tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima, tuungane sote na tujibidishe kutoa kilicho bora kwa Afrika, chimbuko la wanadamu, chemchemi ya utamaduni, tumaini letu wakati wa mafarakano. Enyi Bwana na binti wa Afrika, mwili wa jua, mwili wa anga, tuifanye Afrika mti wa uzima.
Sorry, I noticed that I couldn't share the sound, and I apologize for that. Just before Hannah proceeds, I would like to say a few words about the speaker, who is Dr. Joshua Lash Balu, who is a conflict resolution practitioner working at the University of St. Joseph in Macau, that's China. And he has been working hard to develop cross-cultural experiential learning programs and is affiliated with the USJ Xavier Center for Memory and Identity, and is a Macau and American. And he holds degrees from George Mason University. So probably, I'm sure he knows Lester Kurtz. From the Carter School for Peace and Conflict Studies, and has background in community trust building, workplace mediation, and religious peace building. And Joshua is currently based in Toronto, Canada. And so we are really glad to see you, Joshua, and you'll be taking us through an important topic, which is articulating a grammar of identity, alterity for Catholic universities. So you are welcome. And maybe Hannah, you've got a word you'd like to share now.
Thanks, George. Not really. I think I'll take it on from after when Joshua has made his presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, and we welcome everybody to Global Peace. So after his presentation, we'll have questions and answers. So you are welcome. Joshua, if you have a PowerPoint, you can share it. We are looking forward to your talk. Perfect.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mukalemwa, and good day to everyone around the world. I'm excited to be able to present a little bit of something I've been working on recently. And as introduced, it's articulating a grammar of identity alterity for Catholic universities. I grew up in Macau, China. I am not Catholic, but in Macau, the school systems are either Catholic or communist. And so I was in a Catholic school system growing up, and working for a Catholic university in Macau, bringing my peace and conflict studies to the topic. I think I have some things that I've been thinking about that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share with you today. So actually, this is the outline of the presentation. I'll share just briefly about the Xavier Center and how, and then the theoretical framework. And the focus is on these grammars of identity and alterity, and I'll share 3 different kinds that have been identified, as well as maybe a 4th kind that is discussed, but dismissed in the literature, a pacifist grammar of love. So first of all, the Xavier Center for Memory and Identity is named after Francisco Xavier, the Portuguese Jesuit who went to China. Actually, he died on an island nearby Macau. And this center is coordinating an international research group for the Federation of Catholic Universities and Colleges on memory and identity. So this presentation is part of the work of that international research group. It's very, very draft. So I look forward to hearing all of your ideas and suggestions and sharings about the topic. This picture is from Macau. I took it in Macau. As you can see that it's China, but also has European architecture because Macau was a Portuguese colony for nearly 500 years. And that's why there's Catholics there. So this is where Macau is. You know where Hong Kong is. You can see where Macau is. This is Hong Kong, quite large. Macau is quite small. And you can get there in a variety of different ways. I like to use this image because it's borderless, but then I need to draw some borders to show you where things are. So it's a bit ironic. So the theoretical framework I'm working with, it builds from social identity theory, specifically favorable comparison and a locus of self-esteem ideas. And then collective axiology, which is developed by George Mason University professors in the faculty where I came from, about morality and stereotyping. And then lastly, these grammars of identity and alterity. So first of all, for social identity theory, Henry Tajfal and John Turner developed this in the 70s and 80s. And one of the basic takeaways is that groups can form social groups, and they will begin to think that they are better than other groups. And they explain this as the way that individuals can meet the needs that they have for their own self-esteem by identifying with the group. So all individuals need to think well of themselves, and if they identify with the group, you can think well of the group, and that makes you feel good about yourself. So that's in-group favoritism. And this was in the field of social psychology. Vulcan described this kind of phenomenon as individual identity is like a shirt or a tunic, and social identity is like a tent. So it covers many of us, where the individual identity is there on our bodies, but we can still get protection from the sun or from the environment inside the tent as well. So of course, Selena discusses the locus of the self. It can either be internal, so the group says we are good. Look at how good we are unique, focusing on themselves. Or they can develop a self-esteem by looking externally. See, we're not like them. This or that.
Hi, Joshua.
We are-
Hi, Joshua. Joshua, Kobe. Could you please speak a bit louder, or maybe move close to your microphone? We seem to be struggling a bit to hear you.
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, sounds perfect.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay,
Thanks.
sorry, I
Proceed.
did not see.
All right. Thank you.
The chat. Okay. So the good thing is, so far, I'm just describing the slides. Hopefully, if you can get the idea. So internal self-locus is we are good because of who we are. External locus of self-esteem is we are good because they are not good. We are better than them. Look at them. So these are some ways that social identity functions. So for collective axiology, there's two aspects. One is collective generality. So this picture is like us. Our group is like this. Their group is like that. If there's high collective generality, it means we just see the other without much distinction. They're all the same. So you see, they begin to blur together. We do not see the individuals as unique people, but they're all the same. So it's a scale. It can be high or low. And then axial balance is about morality. It can be balanced, which means we have good things and bad things. They have good things and bad things, or it can be imbalanced. So most of the good is in us, and they have very little good. And of course, these can be extreme. The balance can be completely one side where we are all good and they're all bad, and the generality can be we are unique and they have no unique individuals. So you can see if you put this into a table, if there's balance and as diverse, then there can be positive intergroup relations. However, if we are all good and we are all bad, we're all the same, this can lead to genocidal relations. And so and then using this, we can see a path to work, trying to move our attitudes from this box, genocide box, to the peace box. So these are theoretical frameworks table, but how do we talk about these things in real life? So I found this book, Identity and Alterity, Structuralist Approach, which collects chapters from a variety of anthropologists to be very helpful. It first discussed how the self and the other are apparently binary. We have I have you, but actually these are ternaries. It means there's three groups going on. There's us, there's you, and then there's them who's outside of us and you. So you can think of this like if I say I love you, I love you, that even though I didn't say anything about them, there's someone that is excluded from that. So these ways of talking about identity and alterity always include a third party or someone outside of the identity split. They also discuss grammars versus anti-grammars. So grammars would be ways that groups maintain distinctions with the other, and an anti-grammar would be the collapse of these distinctions, which for them, their concern is genocide. When the other needs to be destroyed. It's an anti-grammar because it no longer maintains the difference, the distinction between the self and the other. So if you destroy the other, actually you destroy the whole system. So with this kind of setup, they identify three different kinds of identity alterity. The first is orientalizing, encompassment is the second, and then segmentation. They also say the only truly pacifist grammar that we have is the transcendent grammar of love, but also in the book they say that the only logical possible grammars are the first three. So they dismiss this potential transcendent grammar of love. So I'll just briefly explain the three grammars. The first orientalizing grammar is a negative mirror image. So what is good in us is lacking in them. So this positive, what's positive about my group is bad in the other group. And what is lacking in us, we have some things that are not that great. They are still good about that. So one of the ways that I think is common to see this is with immigration, a home country, identity, social group will oftentimes look down on the immigrant communities. They are not as good as us. They're lacking in many things, but maybe they have some positives. Like maybe they stick together, or they support each other, or they have a more cohesive social identity that we don't have in the dominant society. So there's this way of it seems very balanced. Oh yeah, there's some good in us and bad in them, but at the fundamental, we are still better than them. And also, it emphasizes that they are completely different from us, except that there are some exceptions. So this is the ternary. So like, you think of any kind of groups that you know of, or maybe a part of, say those people are all like this. They're not very good. We're better than them, but there are some exceptions. My friend, he's a good kind of that group. So when I was growing up in Macau, I heard this kind of grammar in the way my parents talked about Catholics, because my parents were Protestant church workers, and Protestants are a very small minority in Macau. And they would say the way they would distinguish between the Catholics and the Protestants would say we have a priesthood of the believers, which means that we can approach a relationship with God on our own. We don't need an individual like a priest to be between us and God. But because we're so individualistic, that means there's many divisions among Protestants. The Catholics are unified. So you can see the positive about us is that we can approach God. They cannot, but it means there's some downside that they have some positive too. And then the exceptions are some Catholics can have a personal relationship with God. So that's one example. Hopefully I'm explaining in a way you can find some relation to your life or which you're familiar with. The next one is encompassment grammar. So these are hierarchies with including another group. So in the abstract, we're the same. There's actually not any difference that matters, except that you are inferior to us. So it seems like it's inclusive. We are all the same, but you cannot protest and say no, we are different. So there's not a way of dialogue on an equal basis. And of course, this means that you and I, there's this third other that is not the same as us. So an example would be in my Catholic school in Macau. We would have religious education class, and in Macau is less than 5% Christian and less than 1% Protestant. So it's very small, even though the school, many schools are Catholic, the population is not Christian. And so in religious education class, me being a Protestant Christian, the priest would invite me up to discuss Christianity in front of the class, because I was seen as enough like Catholics to be included. But of course, I could not have the final say on anything, which I was just explaining. But in reality, the Catholic doctrine and so on would be a primary rule, and then whatever I had to contribute had to fit within that in order to be accepted. So that would be an example of grammar. And then finally, there's segmentary grammar. So this is context dependent. I did not edit this slide completely correctly, sorry. But I hope you can see the image on the side to get an example. So you can see there's the self, there's the other, and then there's others. So this is like a general thing. What makes it segmentary is that when we move up one level, we get a different division. And then we move up one more, another different division. So let me actually give you an example of this. One can be sports. So for me, growing up, I played basketball. My classmates and I, my teammates and I, these issues of religious identity were not very important. What was important was which team you were on, which school you represented. And if you can see within our school, we would play different classes. So the self would be my class against your class. And then anyone outside the school is the other. But then schools would play against each other. So we move up one level. So my school against your school, and then move up one more, and we will represent the city against other cities or other countries, because Macau can compete on the international level. So another way to do that is Catholics and Protestants are different, and there's others, but they're all Christian. If you bring some Muslims or Jews into the room, suddenly, actually, you're a Christian and they are the other. And if you bring in some Buddhists into the room, actually, we are Abrahamic faiths and they are the other. And then if you bring some atheists into the room, actually, we are people of faith and they are the other. So these segmentary grammar can move up and down. It seems like very flexible, but who controls the apex? Who controls the top of the pyramid? Who decides when to stop moving up or down is a matter of power. So it can be a struggle over that. And also at each level, there can be orientalizing or encompassing grammars to explain the difference. And then it contains levels. So it can also contain the other two. So hopefully I've explained it in a well enough way that you can understand some of what it means. So orientalizing is defining the other against the self. We are completely different. What is good in me is bad in you, and some of my deficiencies you are good at. Encompassment defines the other as the self. You're just like me. You can't say anything about it. That's just the way it is. And lastly, segmentation shifts up and down. So what is this? What about a pacifist grammar of love? It seems like logically those are the only options. But in my studies, when I came across this, I thought, maybe what if we don't give up? And what if we actually think about pacifist grammar of love, especially from a Christian perspective? What might that look like? So working for a Catholic university, the identity of Catholic universities is always an important topic, especially in Macau, where we have the only Catholic university in China. Of course, we're talking about identity, alterity, social groups, and things like that. So they can be very tricky in some places in the world. So actually, Taiwan has some Catholic universities. So depending on how you want to define things currently or as you think they should be, currently in China, I think it's fair to say that USJ is only Catholic university. Looking at the way Catholic universities are defined in the important documents that do that for identity in Catholic universities, they seem to do this there's two things. Literally, it says Catholic universities are both universities and Catholics. So, a human community animated by Christ and an international community of scholarship. So, belonging to two different communities, it essentially links to the quality of teachers, that's academic side, and respect for Catholic doctrine. So there's these two ways in which Catholic universities are kind of in between the church and society. Pope John Paul II, who was the one who prepared the Exporte Ecclesia, addressed the presidents of Catholic colleges and universities in 1979, and had a similar kind of distinction that the identity of Catholic universities is commitment to scientific research and authentic Christian living. So, what might this identity look like for to be Catholic? So, the International Research Group is also focusing on the book by John Paul II, who was very focused on Catholic universities. Memory and identity. The identity of Christians is fundamentally about remembering what Christ has done, and the Eucharist is what unifies Christians. It's about memory, doing something in remembrance of what Jesus has done. And the first Eucharist was around Passover time, and similarly, Passover was something to be done in remembrance of what God has done. So it's about remembering. And it defines that identity of the Jewish nation. So the start of the Exodus, so we say, was God's revelation of himself to Moses. And in that, God defines himself as I am. So following with this, the self, to begin with a grammar of identity alterity, is not the people, but the self is God, and the people are the other. And it flips, or what one Buber might say about I and thou. Actually, God is I, and that makes us the thou. There's also connections to some Emmanuel Levinas, but I would need to keep working on understanding that one. So instead of us approaching God, God approaches us. God is the self, we are the other. And so Passover was a way to define the group. No foreigner should have part in the Passover, something just for the nation. And it defines God. If God is the self, God's people is the other, and then the third other is the Gentiles. So for Christians who build from this with the Eucharist, you're all God's children, being baptized into Christ. They clothe yourselves with Christ. Clothe also sounds similar to Tolkien's idea about shirt and an identity being taken on. And so God staying as the I, the baptized as the other, the unbaptized. Other. And what does baptism represent? It's just an action. Well, it represents repentance is one of the things, and it's continually needed. So actually, what it means is there's God as the I, there's the repentant as the other, and the other is the unrepentant. So what does it mean to be repentant? I think this is the key to a pacifist grammar of love. In Pope Francis's, before he became Pope, The Way of Humility, he talks about self-accusation as an important way of being, specifically Christians. And I can see repentance, self-accusation as a way of moving through these boxes to get to axial balance. So it prevents us from saying we are all good. We focus on a mixture of good and bad that we've done, and also contributes to lowering the collective generality, so that we can say that we have a mixture of a lot of different kinds of people. They also have a mixture of other kinds of people. We cannot say we are all good and they are all bad. So this is my last slide. I didn't want to make slides for the last little bit because it's still I'm still undecided about some of that, but I think the obvious recommendations for Catholic universities to embrace a grammar of identity alterity that is authentic to being Catholic universities would be to embrace repentance and self-accusation, being in a special place that is Catholic and university, in the church, in society. And of course, just like to be axiologically balanced, there's good and bad things in the church, there's good and bad things in Catholic universities, just like there's good and bad things in society. Only God is all good. So I think this anchoring God as the self helps to keep the axial balance, and the Catholic university being in society and the Catholic Church helps to anchor the collective generality as being low. I'm currently in Toronto, and the Catholic Church has done many bad things to the Indigenous population here, to children in other parts of the world. Similarly, there's the scandals, and I think one of the things this self-accusation can contribute to is to not be defensive, not see others as threats. But if the Catholic Church, through the Catholic University, orients itself as that, if it is the real inheritor of God's message, that there's nothing to fear, only God is to be feared. And so repentance makes sense, and to accuse itself before anyone else accuses it, I think would be one of the missions of a Catholic university, although of course that can be controversial. And so I look forward to hearing what your thoughts are about these ideas, how they apply to your context, as well as if you are part of Catholic University or the Catholic community, what you think in terms of the way I'm applying these ideas and the potential that they have for building better relations and potentially a new grammar or an old grammar of love that doesn't make any sense logically, but can bring about peace. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joshua, for your presentation. It was quite insightful and quite enlightening. And I believe we've got quite a bit of some comments and probably questions, and that will enliven the discussion. And like you rightly said, you'd be so keen to hear on how we would probably apply that in our own context. So before I go, I would like to give the opportunity to anybody else on the call who has a comment or a question or anything for Joshua. Anybody, you feel free. Yes, Richard, go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon, we can hear you.
Okay,
sure.
Okay, good. Before, this presentation is it looks as if it's mathematical in nature. Actually, it's grammar. Then it means we can describe peace, or we can build peace through our usage of what grammar as he stated, or he started. Now, does it mean that, or it means that any error in our grammatical identity actually alters the entire peace-building language in man's daily relationship with others? Thank you. Then when he started, I was actually thinking of why only Catholic? why only Catholic? Why did he limit to only Catholic? Because it looks as if it's practical. I could feel it. At times you talk to your friend. Inwardly, it sounds different, but outwardly, I think it brings peace. All depending on the way you use it. And then, when he started from the Eucharistic downward, it became solely Catholic. How would other religious denominations take this up? And I'm quite happy about what he did, and I'll be grateful if I could get his what is it, PPT to actually go over. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Joshua, would you want to respond to that before I proceed?
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much. I think I didn't mention for me the three grammars are in some ways natural, but dangerous. So many things are dangerous in this world. That doesn't mean they're bad. But I think that for me, being aware of these grammars of identity and alterity means that I can then pay attention to how they might be harmful, how they might moving more towards dismissing the other or oppressing the other, and having a unrealistic view of yourself, which is perfection or all good or things like that. So I think they're dangerous, and for me, it's helpful to be aware of, and in some ways natural. Your question about why Catholic? The simple answer is because and this is I have something I created for a Catholic research group that's specifically working for something to present to Catholic universities. As I shared, I'm not Catholic, so I'm personally in the space where I do not fully identify, or I don't identify with Catholicism myself. Although I do participate, as I shared, I've been to Catholic school and worked for a Catholic institution. I myself am Christian, and so I see some similarities of ways to have dialogue with Catholics. Personally, my own practice and way I try to work on peace is to focus on what's around me, what groups am I a part of, and start there. So I could also try and think of how this applies to other groups, any other group, but I think it's more authentic and true to work on groups that I am affiliated with first. And so that's why I present this without trying to make it universal. I shared the particular way that I developed it in the research group, and invite also any reflections if it's not applicable to your situation. Maybe there is something that is applicable. Yeah, thank you for your question, though. Is there something I'm missing from what you asked as well?
Oh no, I think if everybody listening to you will be happy, and the way you structured what is it, the items. So I'll play it for you to generalize it. People would love to look at it, because now I'll be asking you to send us the PPT, the PowerPoint for me to examine. Maybe I can develop something out. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and thanks, Joshua, again. So, Peter, you have something to say? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. First of all, this was brilliant and inspiring work. The distinctions that you make are subtle, and that one of those last ones, I really ought to find it, describes my personality accurately. The one that I learned that I had from Stokely Carmichael when I was 16 or 18. I lived in Nigeria just before or after that, I can't remember. And one of my classmates sat down with me at a quiet moment and said, "I think you are better than us. Look, you have all these airplanes and tall buildings and cars, motor cars." And I was completely flummoxed. I had no idea how to respond to this. It was so wrong to me at that young age. It was just so incomprehensibly wrong, but I didn't know how to address it. Couple of other points. Your talk brought up my memories of Edwin Nichols. He wrote something called Philosophical Aspects of Cultural Difference, and there's a lot of videos of him giving speeches about value systems and the way they seem to be distributed continentally, so that the Europeans have a worldview of member object, the highest value in the object or acquisition of the object, and African Hispanics, member to member, the highest value lies in interpersonal relationships and so forth. And in Asia, member to group, the highest value lies in identity with the group and consensus. He gets very detailed with that, and it's pretty amazing. The last thing is I looked at the picture of the marble steps, and having done some stonework, when I arrived in Virginia in my 20s, there were these beautiful stacked dry stone walls around the fields. And there was not so much as a quarter of an inch between any stone. They weren't cut stones, they were just stacked in the shape that they came out of the ground. And I was told that they were built by enslaved people. They would work around the clock by bonfires. When they dropped dead, they'd be dragged away or buried in the wall by the next persons. And I was awestruck at the perfection of the work. And those steps in the picture, my eye immediately went to the cracks, the seams, the joints between those horizontal steps. And they're not merely aligned with each other all the way down the steps, they're aligned in a pattern so that no two steps have the same joint, one above the other. They're staggered perfectly. And I don't articulate any conclusion from that. I just notice these perfections in the context of the people that built them. And the people that built those marble steps for the Catholic University, I presume, may have been enslaved people. Or as a practical matter, they may have had few choices. And the perfection that was imposed is something to consider. So anyway, that's where my mind went. Thank you for that brilliant, brilliant presentation.
Thank you, Peter. Joshua, you have any response?
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Anybody else? In case there's anybody who has any comments or any questions? I think while we wait on anybody else, I just want to pick up from what Richard was talking about, something to do with a bit of some generalization, but just as you were making your presentation in terms of grammars of identity, what came to my mind was sort of the African philosophy of Ubuntu. And I just wanted to find out from you whether you've heard about it, and maybe whether you've tried to read about it, and basically how, of course, it espouses humanity and is more than often loosely translated as I am because you are, or because we are. And essentially what that is supposed to do is basically to, promote unity among us, people, and of course to basically try to erase, the sort of the differences that we tend to have among ourselves. But of course, while recognizing that yes, there are differences, but your differences, your difference, and my difference together is what actually builds society. So basically, trying to eliminate discrimination and building a sense of humanity, and eventually building a sense of unity and peace at the same time. And I thought that in a way also speaks to grammars of identity and how that can be used to build, harmony within societies. And of course, it got me thinking about, and I wanted to probably hear your comments when it comes to the whole aspect. At some point, you talk about the binaries, and I think in some instances, the binaries also espouse power, which you also spoke about. So there's a lot of power relation that happen there, and there's when you look at, like, for example, the media and how it's progressing. I was just watching something the other day on it's a Nigerian production, a Nollywood Nigerian production, and I seem to be noticing a trend where you have powerful women in society being referred to from a masculine point of view. So for example, you have a woman being referred to as the king, or you have a woman, being referred to as, Big Daddy or something like that. And it just got me thinking about how, these identities seem to be now, being played around with, but again, at the same time, being used to explain power relations, in society. And of course, with the multiplication of different identities, I seem to think that in a way also tends to account for the sort of disunity or violence that we seem to see recently. And basically, I would be concerned about how we can try to transcend, those identities. How can we as a society transcend them, and what can we move toward, especially in terms of harmony and unity? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Your first comment about Ubuntu, I have heard of it. Just to share, I first heard of it in 2008 because I'm an NBA fan, a basketball fan, and the Boston Celtics had a new team, and their coach, Doc Rivers, decided that the team motto would be Ubuntu. So that's when I first heard of it. And from my understanding is what you shared. I have only visited Africa, the whole continent, only once, and it was in Northern Africa, or West Africa, Mauritania, so Northwest Africa. And so I'm not familiar with African philosophy very well, being from Macau, my primary exposure is Chinese and Western philosophy. And so for that, I have also considered bringing in some yin yang philosophy that is a binary, but also embedded in it is a ternary that in the Tao Te Ching it says the Tao begets one, one begets two, two begets three, and three begets 10,000 things. That it encompasses everything. So some things like that, specifically because I'm writing from a context of being from Macau, or from a center that is based in Macau. I also, you're totally right. I can definitely do more with the power aspect in terms of the analysis. And I think for me, thinking of this in terms personally, my personal examples, and because as I shared this for a Catholic audience, I was using that Catholic religious distinctions. But gender, I think, is a fundamental way in which difference is articulated across the world. As been mentioned already, race and racism is a big issue, obviously. There is some decolonial scholarship that I think I could bring in as well. In the University of South Africa, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce their name, but Sabelo Lugachini has written about the paradigm of one and paradigm of difference, and how these are Eurocentric binaries that are used. Paradigm of one, there's only one ideal, and everyone should assimilate to it. The paradigm of differences, but you are so different, impossibly different to assimilate. And of course, this can be connected to other kinds of decolonial scholarship, I think. And I would like to also incorporate more of that, because Macau is a post-colonial city. In 1999, the Portuguese handed it over back to China, and I lived through that in my childhood, and so I think that's also a source for including the personal exploration of how these apply to engage with the colonial scholarship and incorporate more power analysis into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Joshua. There's a question from in the chat. Let me just look it up. From Mark, from Perez Hess, and he says, okay, I don't know who it is anyway. Pardon my use of pronouns. Anyway, so the question says, can you explain why some dismiss the pacifist grammar of love?
So I specifically am referencing a book that discusses these grammars. They say there's these three grammars, there's this fourth grammar, a grammar of pacifist, grammar of love, but then ultimately they just say there's just these three grammars that are logically possible. I think part of that might be that they're anthropologists and they're concerned with some making normative claims or any sort of spiritual religious comments. So that's what I refer to in terms of the dismissive, that realm might not be where it can be discussed. But I think in philosophy and religion, that can be where we can discuss this pacifist grammar of love.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Joshua. We'll probably wait. Does anybody else probably have something to say? Any comments?
If I may, something. In thinking about this, I do think there's a distinction between a grammar that oppresses and a grammar that resists oppression. And so I haven't. I was primarily trying to just explore past this grammar of love, but I am open to some grammars that might be necessary to resist oppression. It's not to say, oh, we're all some good, some bad, but have some grammars that can say, actually, this is really bad, and what you're doing is really, really bad, and you need to stop. So I just want to mention that as well. That's not included, but I think that's important to say. Otherwise, it just becomes everyone should just accuse themselves. But I think there also should be room to accuse the oppressor as well. Of course, to draw out the humanity of the oppressor.
Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, I think I'd like to obviously agree with with that. Yes, I think there definitely should be room for pinpointing what is divergent and what doesn't seem to benefit society or humanity. That should be definitely room for that, and I think there was always room for that. However, sometimes it gets swept under the rug into probably these guys under the freedoms, people's freedoms or rights, and somehow it gets lost in translation. But obviously, I agree there should be room for that. Okay. Still wondering. Still waiting for anybody else. If there's anybody who has a comment or question.
If I may,
George.
Hannah. Yeah,
sure,
thank
George,
you.
go ahead.
And thank you, Joshua, for this wonderful presentation. I understand that, China, including Macau, is not, like a Catholic or religious society. And there have been issues, particularly regarding freedom of, worship, etc. So how is the situation like, and how do you go around it? If you could share a bit about that, Joshua.
Sure. So Macau is a special place. It's a special administrative region of China. That's the name. Just like Hong Kong, the same system. In that 1997, Hong Kong handed over to China from the British. 1999, Macau handed over from Portuguese to China. And what was agreed to that the way it's formulated, the relationship is that the capitalist system and way of life will be maintained for 50 years. And so the religion is like a minor, is not the main concern of the Communist Party. The Communist Party is mainly concerned with capitalism, and religion is just one of the things that's a troublesome thing. So if you're coming from a religious perspective, like Catholics are, it's focusing on the religion, that's the main distinction. But the main distinction is communism and capitalism. But capitalism can remain in Macau and includes a list of freedoms, assembly, religion, speech. So you have Hong Kong and Macau have this arrangement, right? The history is very different. So Macau, the Portuguese arrived in Macau in the mid 1500s. In 1557, the Ming Dynasty said, you can have some of this land, this little bit of land, because the Portuguese had good guns. So they were chasing away the pirates. And so the officials said, okay, you can stay here. The Portuguese were not very much of a threat because they were far away from Portugal. The Dutch came in and cut off the Portuguese from very, very soon, so that Macau was just a Portuguese city that wasn't very connected to Goa, wasn't very connected to Portugal. So the kind of atrocities that happen along the coast of Africa and India did not happen with the Portuguese in Macau and China. The relationship is very different. Also, you might be familiar with the Jesuit mission to China, and Matteo Ricci came to Macau. The first Western-style university in East Asia was in Macau. And these are seen as positive things generally. Of course, I think I can apply these difference, identity, alterity, specifically to the Jesuit mission and how they navigated that. But in general, it's a relationship of respect. And so the Catholic Church in Macau is not seen as a threat or a bad thing. It's allowed to exist. It's part of the cultural heritage of Macau. It helps with tourism, and tourism helps with the economy because Macau's economy is based on casino gambling. So I think I'm trying to give like a more broad perspective of the context for why the Catholic Church is allowed to continue in Macau. Of course, in all relationships, there are some things that if you say or do, it will make some people upset. And navigating that is something just a part of life. If you're curious about maybe how Hong Kong and Macau took different directions, I can share about that. But specifically, Macau is quite different. There's anyone can go to church anytime. Catholic schools can run and have mass and teach religion education. Recently, in the last few years, patriotic education is encouraged. So it doesn't diminish religious education, but you also need to include some patriotic education. So that's the more recent. Yeah.
Thanks, George, and thanks, Joshua. Richard, your hand is
up. Hello. I was trying to say, please, do you think history has influence on man's perception of current realities? No, I don't think so. In Christian religion, we believe Christ was in Nazareth, Israel, and other things. But that doesn't mean if you go to Nazareth, it means you are close to where Jesus. If you go to Nazareth, it means you are almost on the path of Christ to heaven. No. When you reach Nazareth, you realize it's the same as it's the same as the country that you left from. You see, so history. I don't think history has a changing effect to what is it? Man's quest for total peace. Total peace is, I think, is within individual. How individual will be able to handle himself or herself, and then try to relate to the other neighbor. That is all what peace is about. So I don't think as a Christian, if I go to a country where they're not Christians, but they are Muslims, will deter me. No. I don't think that will have a fearing influence on me. So that is my take. Excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing about your experience and how you view the role of history. Would you also say that's most people around you, or the context for the communities you work with, and that history doesn't have a role in how people see themselves, or
So that was the question directed back at Richard, isn't it?
No, I was just adding up, topping up to how we perceive history. To for example, the history of Christian religion to that of Muslim. I don't think that is a means to maybe battle up and then more peace, our peace. They don't think about who they are as Muslims. Neither do we also think about who we are as Christians. You see, we are all moving toward through the path of Christ to heaven. They are also moving in a different path. Everyone is concentrating on that path. Then you are a Christian, so you need not come close to me. You are Muslim. No. I don't see it that way. Maybe if people are seeing it that way, that would be different. But to me, I don't see it that way. Thank you.
When you said Christians are only thinking about their path, Muslims are only thinking about your path. Yeah, I think that's very true. Everyone is concerned with themselves. And yeah, that's why I shared that from a Catholic Church perspective, of course, religion is the most important topic in China. But from the Communist Party, communism is the most important topic. Because it takes a little bit of work to, of course, think of the other person's perspective, how they're seeing things. Sometimes what we think is the main difference is not what the other person thinks the main difference is. Yeah. There's not just one history that we're working on.
No, okay. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, Richard, and thank you, Joshua. Yes, Ben, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joshua. Amazing presentation, by the way. Sorry. A French speaker, I forgot his name, said, I'm translating, it may be a paraphrase. Humans are like rabbits. You take them by ears. When we speak, we speakers, as you did today, we take listeners by ears, but these ears may understand differently what we are saying. Why? Simply because we are different. We are different by gender. Hannah mentioned that. We are different by religion. We are different by ethnicity, color of skin. What else? Training. There are PhD guys. There are those who just finished primary school. But when we speak, all these different people will understand things differently. This is why, for example, at the end of your presentation, there were different questions and comments from Peter or from Richard. In my case, what you call grammar, I understand it as discourse. People, I'm coming from a Congo background where we have 450 ethnic groups and the same number of languages. So although we are culturally rich, people, this country has become a mess with a conflict which is claiming more than 10 million today of death. So discourse, where I like your presentation is there. We are, what is killing or destroying our world is the discourse of we versus them. And this is what you're talking about. And this is why I admire and appreciate what you did. I like your presentation because it comes like it's going nearly in the same direction with what we do in our CRC. This is a group I set up 30 years ago in the Congo, Centre Résolution Conflit, and we have a version of it now in Bradford, where in the UK, where we live as refugees since 21 years. On our website, on the main page, you'll find a message which is like yours. We say we are different by gender, whatever, but we were created to live and work together. And that is a message for the world, not only for Congo, not only for China, where there is also mess, because there are minorities. The Chinese government is trying to destroy. You find this, that is a message needed in Russia, trying to destroy its own neighbor. So yeah, this is what I want to say. But I could also add this, your presentation brings back issues like slavery, colonization, neo-colonization, and even modern slavery. This knowledge, like the one you bring to us, is really a new approach, because slavery for centuries, issues like slavery and colonization were normal, even in the church, even in the Catholic Church. But praise God, today, people like you and us, all of us who are peacemakers, we are trying to tackle these issues. Ubuntu, that Hannah mentioned, and you respond very well because you are living far, far away from Africa. So it's normal that you have never heard about Ubuntu, or you don't know enough about it. But today, people are standing up with things like Black Lives Matter, or Ubuntu itself, or Me Too. Lots of things coming out just to say the same message as what you have been saying. So this is how I was reflecting when you were talking, when Richard also was thinking about this, the stairs. and the stones of which appears from your PowerPoint. But what I didn't see, but he saw it. So thank you. It's not a question, it's just a reflection.
Sure, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Ben. Joshua, you have a response? George, okay, let's hear from George first and then.
All right, thank you. I would like to ask Ben to proceed with something else. That's the question of environmental peace building, and that will be done after Joshua has responded to that comment, and then we can proceed, because Erica Key was here, but she left because she had, I think, a flight to catch or train. I'm not really sure. I don't remember very well. But she asked Ben, there are two Bens today, at Ben to talk about environmental peace building, the funding scoping. So if you could start, Joshua, and then Ben will join us. Thanks.
Or perhaps,
I see in the chat, yeah.
Yes, yes, sure. I think Eliseo has a question. Maybe Joshua would want to hear that first. Eliseo, I think you can unmute and yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you, other participants. As I was listening to Dr. Benny, I was also burning myself inside here with a question which I wanted to make to Joshua, because he has presented a quite interesting point, which I think in some point it meets us in Mozambique. I understand, Joshua, that Macau was similar to Mozambique, a colony of Portugal, but it is also under great influence of China. So first I want to maybe if you can help clarify if Macau has had two colonizers, or first I would like you to help understand that point. And then after you clarify the point, I have another question because of this issue of grammar of identity that you raise, which also in Mozambique we raise it due to the colonial influence, serious problems of identity. Just by fact of being as Mozambicans, we have many languages, local languages, which all of them, they constitute identities. And sometimes we fight because we think or believe that we are different. Other times when we have a common enemy, we unite ourselves due to the interests. And when it came the Portuguese influence, it was one more problem, although sometimes we may see it as a solution. It is a solution because it brought us a language, which is now an official language, Portuguese, which unites Mozambicans. But it is a problem because it was a colonization and it divided and it left a legacy which up to now, we are unable to overcome it due to the kind of colonization that we went through. It did not aim at developing people, empowering them. It made us more, it made us poorer. And in that way, we even try to differentiate ourselves. Like when we talk about the Portuguese legacy and we try to compare it with the English legacy, we see our neighbors in Malawi, South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe as better off because they had a colonizer who powered them than us, who had a colonizer who removed the power from us. So I would like to hear more from you. What are the cultural values of Macau and left as a legacy from the Portuguese or from the Chinese or from the locals? And this is one question. And another question is, what are the peace challenges in Macau? Is it identity? Is it language? Is it discourse, as Ben was saying? Is it culture? What are the peace challenges you have in Macau? Thank you, and sorry for taking so long.
No, don't say sorry.
That's okay,
Very
so.
interesting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure, go on.
Wow, yeah, it's very interesting because your comparison between Mozambique and Ghana, Nigeria, are British, the Portuguese colonialism versus British colonialism. Very interesting because that's Macau versus Hong Kong. And you're right, the Hong Kong, rich, financial hub, Macau, before 1999, not very rich, insignificant. And I'm not Portuguese, so I don't feel defensive, or I have no personal identity connection to Portuguese culture, just friends who are Portuguese. But so I don't want to comment too much about Portuguese culture versus UK culture. Of course, colonialism is bad no matter what, and the British stole so much and really made things difficult after the opportunities to decolonize that people took against them. And Macau is laid back. Hong Kong is not laid back. Macau the Portuguese administration in Macau basically was where they sent some, okay, you want to be governor, you can go to this tropical place, it's not like relaxed place and just retire after some time. So in the 1900s, it was just like not administered very well, in my opinion. So much crime in the 80s and 90s because the Portuguese were very lax. Their approach to the economy was just to monopolize things, or to have one person or one company in charge of a whole sector. So, and they realized that they can just be a gambling center, that people can come and gamble, prostitution legal. So it's very interesting because there's a very strong Catholic heritage, but also very strong vices, gambling, prostitution, drugs from before. And so when 1999 handover happened, very big difference in terms of the administration. The current administration is much more responsible, much more caring for the actual society. So your comment about, okay, does it have two colonizers? Some people have that concern. Okay, Lisbon just changed to Beijing, different colonizer. My experience, in terms of how things have changed, it's just much better, much more protection for the local people. The concerns that the government has, they take people's concerns seriously compared to before. The Portuguese administration did have a lot of anxiety before the handover. They realized that they were not leaving much legacy. So they did a lot of public works. They changed the streets. They changed the buildings. They tried to make more of a Portuguese feeling in the city. They put calçada portuguesa, some stones that in some of the squares to make it look. So there's a lot of fabricated. Well, all culture is created, right? So the government created some culture, and that tried to establish a unique Chinese identity for Macau. So some people have written about that as well. And that's something that, yeah, I think I some of my work can also I would like to engage with some of that as well. And it's very interesting, your comparison as well, because I think that might be an interesting thing to look at, these different types of colonization, colonization, how they look afterwards. I need to go actually, because I have an appointment with my wife to see midwives, because we are expecting our second child in a few months. So I very much appreciate all of your time. And please be in touch with any
Congratulations.
ideas. Thank you.
In advance.
Yeah. But I need to go. So thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you so much, Professor George. Thank you for all of your listening and for your sharing to everyone.
Thank you, Joshua. We actually have come to the end. So I'll just basically hand it over to George, but I think Ben had something to say, and then George to close up. Yeah.
No, nothing to say. I was just greeting the one who is leaving.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
And maybe the other Ben, if Ben, you are listening, maybe Ben is not with us. So I thank you very much indeed all for your participation and for your kind comments and contributions, and in a particular way, of course, I thank Hannah Mzee for this wonderful moderation. We look forward to seeing you all next week. We'll be talking about, again, another important topic, which is geopsychology theory to conflict, the application of this theory to conflict resolution and war prevention in volatile regions with the Professor B.M. Jain. So thank you very much for your time. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
too.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Merci.